Get ready with me while I tell you about how the pay-to-play MAGA influence campaigns work. For those who don't know, my name is Ashley Sinclair, and I was involved in MAGA politics and was a MAGA influencer for almost a decade. I know. Now, MAGA, and really MAGA, not so much just GOP messaging, is incredibly coordinated. And I was initiated into this very young, about 19 years old, when I was first brought on to Turning Point. That was when I was invited to my first Turning Point event and was really thrust into this MAGA influencer ecosystem. In 2015-2016, MAGA and their operators realized how important and consequential social media was for politics. This really started during the Obama years when they harnessed the internet and email campaign messaging, and then MAGA took it to the next level with things like Cambridge Analytica and coordinated messaging on sites like Twitter. Their main avenues for this influence are group chats, paid influence campaigns, and parties. Now, for the group chats, they operate with large influencers, particularly on Twitter. That is their primary mode of communication, is Twitter. And they will have these giant group chats that make influencers and individuals feel important because they are in group chats with members of the administration, people on the Trump team, in which they coordinate these messaging tactics. They also have coordinated calls with these campaigns and with these politicians, so you feel that you are important. What I really want to focus on, What I really want to focus on, though, is the paid campaigns, because this is able to fester through many loopholes within our own regulations and laws, because since what they're promoting is messaging or petitions or campaigns and not a service or a product, they do not have to disclose that they are paid for this on social media. So they have these Republican operatives, some of which were former White House, who build out these platforms that these right-wing influencers can log onto and see active campaigns and sign up for and get paid for promoting certain messaging, certain initiatives, certain petitions. And this pay is typically, per click. Sometimes it's a flat rate, but it is everything from, hey, tell your audience to call their members of Congress and vote a particular way on this bill, or, have your followers sign this petition, promote this propaganda, XYZ. And the structure is indistinguishable from ad campaigns that you would do for a traditional company. So if you take, Tarte, for example, or a cosmetic brand or what have you, typically when they get influencers, they will also have a company copy or things that they should say, a script. And so do these right-wing influencers. They are given a script, they are paid, and they post it. And the only difference is that they do not have to disclose that it's an ad, because of our current laws and regulations do not require them to do so, since it is not a good or a product. Now, some of these consulting firms that pay for this stuff, they will show up on FEC records because, the campaign or the PAC or the candidate pays them. But once they pay this consulting firm, it's gone. There is no further disclosures required by the consulting firms or anything like that. So this is a good way for them to hide exactly who they're paying for messaging, because it just goes through these firms that do not require any additional reporting to the FEC. And again, they also have these group chats with members of the administration and high-up officials that, especially when a scandal or controversy breaks out, all of this messaging is coordinated. Hey, here's how we respond to the files. Here's how we respond to the war. Here is how we respond to everything. So there's this entire ecosystem of large influencers. All of the largest influencers that you have seen in the right wing, 99% of them are paid or compensated or having their back scratched in one way or another. And then this trickles down because the people under them, these smaller influencers, are not aware of this. So when they're looking to these larger accounts in response to controversies or messaging, what they're seeing is actually very coordinated and very sophisticated influence campaigns from the top. There is no free thinking here whatsoever. They are waiting to get marching orders and a direct deposit. This also works on a smaller scale for influence campaigns because there are private, very wealthy donors that will pay independent journalists to do certain projects or videos, and that never has to get reported to the FEC because it's between two private individuals, even though the messaging and the influence is for political purposes. This happened to me at one point when there were a lot of scandals going on with the airlines and immigration, which I unfortunately had a role in boosting that rhetoric. I had a very wealthy billionaire who reached out to me because he had personal beef with Southwest, so he wanted me to do a sting operation on Southwest to see if they were flying migrants around the country. I did not do that. To obfuscate things even more, this happens between private companies as well. So some of the biggest private companies within the right, particularly the right-wing media, they will be reached out to by people who want particular messaging. I was aware of this several times in regards to Israel, where Republican companies, right-wing companies, private media companies were offered millions of dollars to promote pro-Israel messaging and just sprinkle in things. So they're also doing this very covertly when they're making these asks. They're saying, let's just sprinkle it in here and there for a larger scale, long-term influence campaign. And issues like this with money in politics really began around the 70s, late 70s. And there's a particular case that I've been fascinated by, which is Buckley v. Vallejo, and other subsequent precedents that basically solidify money as speech. And what you do, this happened right on the heels of the civil rights era, right? And all of these individuals are now able to participate in democracy, at least on paper, in the same way as everyone else. Well, a lot of people, particularly very wealthy corporate men, were not happy about this. So they got right to work saying, well, we need to differentiate ourselves. And they basically complained to the courts and complained that corporations were basically political minorities and that they should be able to participate in politics and that money is speech. And our court affirmed this. The Supreme Court has affirmed many times that money is free speech. So by definition, there are a lot of people in this country who have more free speech than others. And our current system is incredibly archaic in the sense that it does not account for the internet and that these influencers do not have to disclose when they're paid, in the sense that basically money can be hidden in politics through these consulting firms, and I have seen it time and time again. They throw money around for everything. At one point, I was offered a lot of money to promote Rick Grinnell for Secretary of State when the Trump administration admin picks were happening. And I can guarantee you, he was not the only one in this pay-to-play scheme. And at the other end of almost all of these payments are also confidentiality agreements, meaning that even if these individuals involved had a change of heart and realized that they are participating in great evil, that they cannot speak up about it or they will get sued into oblivion. So not only have the wealthy created a system in which their political influence means far more than yours, but they've also been the architects of a system in which they have these manufactured reputations and narratives, and they manufacture silence through these incredibly asymmetric contracts in which people could lose their livelihoods and reputations for speaking.